Good morning, and thanks for joining us live here on Twitter this morning. Hopefully you can see us and hear us all well. If you'd like to join in the conversation as we go along, please use the Twitter handle at the bottom of the screen that you see scrolling across now. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Lord Jim Knight, and we're going to have a conversation around what's going on in education, how we see things changing. But before we get started, Jim, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a bit about yourself?
Thanks, Winston, and it's a real joy to be joining you as part of this. Well, I'm probably on my fifth career, having worked in theatre, having worked in telephone directory publishing. That's a blast from the past, and then elected as a member of Parliament in 2001, where I was an MP for 9 years and 5 years as a minister, which was a year as an environment minister at DEFRA, 3 years as the UK schools minister, and then the final year in Gordon Brown's cabinet as the employment minister in the sort of post-2008 banking crash days, which seems like a tea party compared to what government's going through at the moment. And then once electoral gravity caught up with me, I got the golden parachute into the House of Lords. So I'm still there doing some legislating, but since then I've been working in education, mostly for a company called TES, but also with others, Apple, Smart, a bunch of other people. And that's been fascinating in terms of really thinking about how technology can help teachers, can help school leaders, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about that today.
Excellent. So for those who don't know me, my name's Winston Poyton. I am Senior Product Director here at Iris. One of my responsibilities is looking after the education portfolio. So we like to get together with folks like Jim and have a chat about education and give our thoughts and share thoughts to really explore the opportunities that we all believe are in education and how we might be able to help education move forward and deliver what I think most of us in education are here to do, which is improve the life chances of children, have a positive effect on the next generation, and really try and make improve the lives of teachers as well, as particularly at the moment with COVID and everything going on that's making life difficult in some regards and presenting opportunities in other ways. So hopefully today everyone will enjoy the chat that we have around just thinking about what that technology changes happened certainly over the last 12 months and what we might see going forward. So to get us started then, Jim, over the last kind of 12 months, from your perspectives, what do you think the biggest headaches have been for teaching professionals, and as a result of all the changes that we've seen through the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, the headaches have been numerous and almost impossible to comprehend from the outside. But the majority, within the classroom, the majority of teachers have not been trained in how to use technology. They've not. The amount of training, frankly, in quite a lot of assessment has diminished a lot. And suddenly, the first, pretty much overnight, had to get to grips with how to teach using a technology that they weren't familiar with, across the age ranges. Really hard for early years teachers, but with the pressure at the other end in secondary of worrying about exams, and it took a while for those to be announced that they weren't going to happen, that they were going to go towards a teacher assessment model or a centre assessment model, as it was last summer, with all of the catastrophe that happened around how that played out.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, sort of outside the classroom, you had school leaders. I was speaking to a friend of mine, I guess a year ago, who was running a school, an international school in Monza in northern Italy. And it was a Sunday night, and he just got a message saying he wouldn't be allowed in his school the next day because they were all being closed. And so without even being able to go in, he had to get everything up and running across his school, in his case, in Google Classroom, and be able to yes, get the learning delivered, but also kind of run his school remotely. And so the forced technology adoption has been massive, and to an extent a headache, to a large extent a headache, just because of the speed with which it's had to happen. And some technology is not in the cloud, and that enterprise technology that's sat in desktops or in servers in school offices suddenly became really problematic. And so there's a whole bunch of things. And then fundamentally for school leaders, what they and I think my sense is this has grown as the crisis has gone on, is they've been having to deal with well-being issues, and they've been having to deal with biosecurity issues around pupils returning to school, and all of that then means that their first order priority ought to be teaching and learning, and it's become a sort of fourth and fifth order priority, because just the compliance stuff and the stuff of keeping the doors open and keeping everyone safe and keeping infection control going and all of that has just had to take a higher priority, and that's just really hard.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, certainly the teachers and the head teachers I've been speaking to, and my own experience, both of my children are in secondary school, one doing GCSEs, one doing A levels, and a mixture of temporary buildings with marquees, and then having to worry about heaters, and then worrying about how people move around the school in corridors, and to try and maintain some level of social distancing, and it just exponential impact on everyday life, and all of the additional requests, and also additional requests coming in from parents as well. I think you're right to pull on the external impact on the school, as parents have been worried. They've wanted to communicate with the schools, who often don't know more than the parents from what's been read on news articles and everything else. Certainly a very challenging time for everybody.
And actually, I'm glad you raised parents, and because obviously in a crisis, communication is king. At a national level, I would argue, whatever her tribulations at the moment, Nicola Sturgeon has done a much better job than the UK Prime Minister, because she got the communication right. She's been doing a daily press conference. The actual actions that they've taken haven't differed very much. The timing's been different, but they've done the same kind of things. But one has come over as being much more competent because she got the communication right. And at a school level, we've seen the same thing play out. I know of one school leader down in Somerset who genuinely doesn't enjoy doing it, but she decided that the most sort of honest way of leading her whole school community through all of this was to record a 5-minute video every morning, kind of almost a video diary of just what was current in her mind, and share that with the parent community and the school community generally. And it's worked really, really well. And then I've seen other schools that have really struggled to hold the community together, because in the end they've not been confident and they've been backward about their communication. And then we see the growth of some technologies like, my own stepdaughter's school uses Class Dojo very effectively, but there's a parent mail is used well. There's a whole range of different platforms that and now people are starting to find new creative ways of being able to use that are really interesting.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that. You mentioned the exams last summer and all the changes that happened there. I think we saw from our software point of view, a really different change in the way people started using the software, as obviously for the first time ever, teachers' assessments were being used as final grades, and we had lots of schools being particularly nervous about teachers getting some maybe less friendly remarks back from students as a result of handing them a piece of paper that obviously they feel that the teacher has had a maybe fair, maybe unfair influence over their marks. So we saw some of our communication systems change quite radically as we got feedback in from schools to say, please.
And of course, that problem is going to be enhanced this summer, because it might sound like a geeky technical difference, but last summer, these were centre assessed grades. So
Yes.
it was the responsibility of the school as the examination centre to set the grades. This
Yeah.
year, by all of the language that's been used, these are teacher assessed grades. So it's down to your individual teacher. And so
Yeah.
the pressure on them and the comeback on them is slightly scary.
Yeah, I agree, and certainly we're starting to already get that feedback this year. Going, so that bit of functionality you did for us last year to help us get the remotely securely hand out these grades to the students so they don't come into school and A, spread COVID, and B, potentially have some unfriendly encounters. How can we use that and adopt that again this summer? And so we're definitely seeing some change there. And I think you're right. Now this time round, I think everyone will be, yes, a bit more prepared, but also want to be a bit more demanding because it's been much more upfront, much more open that it's coming through that route.
And I mentioned some innovative uses of established technology. You must have some favorites in terms of how your technology has been used in ways that you weren't really expecting. Have you got any good stories attached to that?
Yeah, we've got some really good stories. We've got, I suppose, to echo your point on one of the teachers, we've got a couple of our customers that are doing that kind of daily 5 minutes every day and doing that as video chat and really getting out to their almost in a TikTok or style where they're doing these little chats and really kind of embracing their community. We've seen others really push activity towards some of our apps and making sure that parents are seeing all the latest information on apps. And so again, there's a great guy that we've been working with for some time on building a newsletter together within the product so that you can do that workflow and save everybody time. So actually use the software to save time on the day-to-day activities, so that you can no longer run around the school, obviously, with a piece of paper saying, quickly give me your notes to go in the newsletter. That's all got to be done remotely, and chasing on emails and chasing on Zoom calls and all those types of things is just not a very efficient way of doing it. So for us, we've seen lots of people using technology in ways that we are reasonably surprised at to save themselves time. And I think time, as we launched EdGen, our new MIS product, a couple of weeks ago, and as we look forward into what we're doing, time and saving teachers time and looking at how we drive efficiency through the great use of tech software, that's a real focus for us to make sure that we make a difference. Really simple things, building and process workflow, so that we've got some schools that if a certain behavior events happen so many times within our MIS, it automatically triggers the next stage in their policy, be that detention, or be that a chat with the parent, or be that a chat with their head of department. But we're building those workflows in and have got lots of those workflows in already to really drive that type of change, which I guess you must get feedback on also. I mean, time and teachers and being freed up to do teaching and learning is a never-ending debate.
Yeah, totally. And I guess in the school office, for some time we've seen technology there in a way that's less controversial than in the classroom, but that during this last year we've seen some of that technology both inside the classroom and in the school office creak somewhat. And I suppose I'm interested, and workflow is key to that, and creating the space for teachers to be more human, creating the space for people who are school leaders, who are school business managers, etc., to be able to focus on their priorities rather than sort of laborious workflows that just are not intuitive enough. But you must have seen the sort of EdTech world respond to all of this change and turbulence as well, beyond some of the product changes that you've made as you've seen innovation. Are there any particular trends that you've seen?
Yeah, I think when we look at what people are talking to us about, and when we see what the discussions around on all the education forums and the communities that are out there, I think more so than ever, cloud has become a when, not an if. I think lots of establishments have held off, and the impact of working remotely, as you said earlier, has really pushed a much greater cloud agenda, a much greater nudge towards having everything available, which then drives the next behavior that we and others have been working on around integration and making sure that you really have got that data flowing between each of the systems, so that the data that's in our MIS matches the data that's in your comms, and you've got the right data for the parents, so that you're keeping that safeguarding and that accuracy of data without having duplicate entries and duplicate information flowing about all over the place. So definitely seeing greater integration. I think. Sorry, go on.
Well, just because the impression that I get, which may be historic, and there are a range of MIS products out there in the market, but a number of them are not, or a number of schools do not have MIS in the cloud. Do you detect an impatience with that, and that people are shifting which MIS they're going to use, and that it's the ability to shift has become easier? Because it felt like some people were a bit trapped in their MIS and felt there was just too much pain to be able to move.
I think people have become, certainly from my experience, having worked in a few companies that offer MIS systems, so I probably need to be a little bit careful. And some of it is definitely historically my fault. So there's a careful case of Schadenfreude if I'm not careful. But I think what the last 12 months has really done is really shown a difference between those that have got their MIS rolled out across the whole school. So they've got teachers engaged, they've got administrators engaged, they've got regular data flowing in, and they really embraced the use of that system to be their central hub, to be the heart of their school, more than just a database of record for student and parent and assessment data and reporting back to the government. So I think those that have really adopted it, really embraced it, and pushed it out across their school, if they were still an on-premise solution, then I think they've really struggled as everybody's moved remote and been able to get there. And I think driving the change in behaviour, where I think looking forward, you now see starting to see a bit of a digital divide in that space, where you have these schools that have really embraced it and adopted it, and are starting to use the data and data insights from that to really move themselves forward. And then you've got the other end of the extreme where they don't really know how to use the technology, or they don't really know how to break the mold that they've been in for some time, and need some help and support in achieving that.
And I assume that's as much a mindset problem as anything else, where you're kind of going, oh, the MIS, that's my compliance tool, or the MIS, that's my force multiplier. That, if I get that right and I understand it, the power that gives me as the sort of base platform to then use technology to do lots of things is immense. And that then is about how well technology is led in schools. And I guess some of your small schools, particularly if they're not in a larger chain of schools, and if the local authority hasn't the capacity to lead them, if they're still in the local authority, if they're not in a MAD, that's where you're most likely to see the mindset that needs to shift. Is that a fair assumption?
I think it's partially fair. I think certainly the academy movement and obviously governments announced recently that they want to drive that and accelerate that even further from today. I think that's definitely prompted a call to action for some change, and so we see change happening as a result of academization of schools. But I don't think I think there are plenty of local authority maintained schools that still drive change and still drive best practice through there. Depends on. And it gets like all of us, doesn't it? I live in a software technology world, so embracing software technology for me is just part of what I do every day. That's not true for everybody. Some people just don't like technology. Some people just don't see the benefit of it and need a bit more help in getting there. And I think that's where, certainly through the adoption of cloud and trying to get, we all live and die by these damn things now, and making sure that the user experience that we get with software is comparable with what we expect as a personal user of whether that's Netflix or whether that's Amazon or whether that's how you manage your HR software in a school, or whether that's how you manage your employee experience in a business. I think we're all being driven towards this much simpler, much easier use to make it so that anybody can use the software, so they're not, we stop talking about a digital divide in can and can't, and we just talk about the great impact and the great insights and the great things you can do as a result of making it available to everybody.
But some of the reluctance to adopt, which, obviously the last year has radically changed, and I think changed permanently, but some of that has also been informed by almost an ethical worry about data.
Yeah.
Do you think that's shifted? And do you think we're starting to get a message through to educators around how they can harness data whilst remaining sort of compliant and ethically sound?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is where the integration story really comes into play, because if you do data integration and you do that securely, and you've got obviously all of your GDPR and your GDPR consents and all of those good things in place, but if you get that integration story right, you start seeing that flow through the day in the life of a school. So whether that's getting up in the morning and parents dropping dinner money on their onto their account, and as the school opens up and you complete registration, being able to real time take that data and feed that back into the school leadership team or into the multi-academy trust, whether as you move through the day, whether you're managing your finances, whether that data is flowing between the dinner money that was put on first thing in the morning straight into your account system, and then as that moves into taking assessments and marks through the day for those individual students. If that's all happening real time, then because it's been pushed out to the school and pushed out to everybody to take advantage of, regardless of the underlying software platform, whether that's ours or integrated with others or a completely different platform. That's the bit that I think is breaking down the historical worry about data, because the data's there, the data's securely in the system. You're seeing consistent data, so you're not worrying about that. And then you start to get to the holy grail, I think, where I think for a long time people have been talked about, okay, so I've got all this data, I've got 20 years worth of educational data. What can I do with it? What can I take from it? What insights can I get from it? And I guess as your time as minister, you must have seen benchmarking data and new insights coming in, and again being able to work out what to do with that data and what initiatives to then run is the challenge for that. So
it is, and it's in a way it's a bit of it was a bit of a frustration, and it remains so, that I'm not sure we've found the right compromise and the right trade-offs around all of that. Ethically, it's really important that people feel safe and comfortable around it all.
Yeah.
And particularly as we move into artificial intelligence and derived intelligence, so data that will have been generated from the public sector then ending up in the hands of the private sector, who can then derive IP through their AI that they then charge back into the public sector at a profit.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting and tricky issues to be negotiated in all of that. But when I looked at what they were doing in China, and when I look at some countries that have a different ethical stand, shall we say, they are capable now of stealing a march in that technology on us, because they're not constrained by the same really justifiable ethical issues, and that's quite it's a difficult balance.
It's definitely a difficult balance. I think there are a few ways of answering the problem, though. I mean, from the outright hilarious, where a couple of years ago I saw an American company demonstrating some video camera software in a classroom where they could get real-time facial recognition feedback to find out how interested the kids were in what was being taught to them, and whether the teacher was actually engaging them, and then giving the teacher live feedback as to how boring or how interesting their class was, which I think was entertaining, actually quite terrifying from anybody's point of view, getting that real-time feedback on whether it's exciting to what you're listening to, right the way through to the extremes of actually, have we got enough data now that we could predict what people's future grades might be, and the risk of that and pigeonholing people. So I think there is a balance that could be had around helping people, certainly initially, benchmark data and being able to say, okay, so I'm doing a set of things in my school. There's a school down the road. What are they doing? And being able to understand how they're doing something, so that you can make your own judgment call as to what you then learn from that and what you then implement in your school. I think there's massive value in presenting data in that way, still allowing for the humans in us and the educators in us to make the informed decision, but maybe with a little guidance to say, in this type of scenario, this stuff seems to work, and in this type of scenario, this stuff doesn't seem to work, but still make your own judgment call.
And I guess in the end, a lot of this is about a value exchange. And some of us sort of stumbled into a value exchange that we didn't really know about when we signed up to Facebook 10 years ago, where we thought we were getting a free service, and we didn't quite realize that it wasn't as free as we thought, because we were paying for it with our attention to advertising. But if we can get the tools in place to really assist teachers on assessment this summer, for example, if we can get the tools in place where the data shows us how we're going to manage the catch-up problem, because one of the things that really concerns me right now is that we talk about catch-up, and that highly stressed teachers and learners are thinking about next year as being the year when they've got to do 2 years of learning, not one, and they're already having a mental health crisis. So it's more like a reset. But if the data through intelligence can tell us who to target and how to target, then there's something really interesting to be done with that.
I think you're right. And you mentioned TES at the beginning, and I read a great article on there the other day from someone saying, yes, learners have been impacted. Yes, educators have been impacted, but if you flip it at a different way, they've got a different learning experience. They've had a different set of experiences as a result of everything that's happened in the last kind of 12 months, and everything that will continue to happen probably for the next 12, 18, 24 months in education. And therefore, how do we embrace that as a learning skill and a learning style and an experience that actually benefits them in the future, rather than the danger is we write off a whole bunch of experiences as not quite what they were before, but so what? I mean, there's definitely a flip side to that. Yes, we still need to play catch up on bits of the curriculum, and yes, we need to find better ways of managing that. But there's definitely positive that comes out of this too.
Yeah, I think so. And it's put a mirror up to the system. That's shown us all of these huge divides and gaps, but it's shown us the potential of technology to really help us, as long as we get the training story right. And I think there's something interesting about we're going into an economic crisis. We're going to see more people on universal credit. We're therefore going to see more people on free school meals. We're going to see more pupil premium money. We're going to then have to make a judgment about how that's invested to really help probably those same kids be able to be in the right place. So I'm avoiding using the word catch up, because being in the right place includes their mental health being good enough so that they can learn, their physical health being good enough to get some of the mental health gains from that as well, and then that their academic learning is okay, and that's going to be different for different ages. And there's all sorts of challenges there, but I really think that there's a technology platform, as you say, if it's been integrated right alongside some training, so that people get their mindset and their skill set in the right place, that's really exciting and really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree, because that's what we're trying to do. And I completely agree. We have to look at it at everything, and certainly conscious of time, and we probably need to wrap up. So from my point of view, I think you're 100% right. Embracing the 100% of education, software technology for me is a part of answering that problem. But there are many things that we need to engage with, whether that's the well-being of children, the well-being of teachers, how we manage time, how we manage data, as you say, how we push things forward to make things easier. We have to do that consciously, sensitively, and thinking about education in its 100% and not in isolation. So that's our ethos is and thinking about how we make that change and the difference for life chances of the future. And I guess that's your ambition too, as you continue to work with
absolutely
education.
And one of the interesting things about talking to you recently and one or two others has been, there's been a long-standing debate around workload pressures on people who work in schools, and yet there's not been that much discussion about workflows and about a more of a design thinking sort of digital product development approach to how you alleviate some of that. And so, all of that stuff about how the workload pressures attached to feedback, attached to marking that is feedback, but attached to data collection and some of those, so much of that can be solved with proper workflows in technology. I think it's a really exciting time now that we've sort of had the step change in technology adoption. For people like you working in product to be able to just get inside where school staff now are as a result of the changes, and then get product out quickly that responds to all of that and innovates and then allows us to really leap forward. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. So completely agree. Right, I think that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for joining me and being so open about your views on everything education. It's been super helpful. If folks watching want to ping Jim or I or use the tag at the bottom, then please do, and we can answer questions and continue on the conversation. Obviously, from Iris's point of view, if you want to feed into our products and feed into the way we're going to try and make that difference, and have got opinion on everything we've said, chuck it in the mix, and we'll do our best to make sure that forms part of the future. So massive thank you again, Jim, and
thanks, Winston.
We'll do this again.
Terrific.
Cheers.
Cheers.